The Galaxy S25 and iPhone 16 are the latest compact flagship phones from Samsung and Apple. I'm going to test the battery life, camera, and usability of these two phones in a day in the life format. I am Mo, and I bought both phones with my own money. The Galaxy S25 is in coral red, and the iPhone 16 is pink. Both phones have roughly the same dimensions. They are not exactly mini, but they are the smallest you can get. Both phones have larger camera rings compared to the previous generation, but they are faking it. The camera system didn't really change. I went out around 10 in the morning, put both phones in the same 5G network, and the first thing I checked was the flare reflection. The reflection appears as a single green dot on the iPhone, while on the Galaxy, it covers a larger area. Also, the Galaxy video is more vibrant, while the iPhone video is more contrasty. The good news is that now on the Galaxy S25, you can shoot in log to color grade your footage if you want to avoid saturated colors. So this is 10 in the morning. I'm now shooting in log with Galaxy S25. I'm going to actually pull it aside to change my driving license, and I will put both our phones on the Google Maps to navigate. I charged both phones to 100% overnight. Both support a rather slow 25 watts charging speed. I navigated using Google Maps to my destination, and by the time I arrived, the Galaxy had 95%, while the iPhone had 99% battery left. After finishing the paperwork, I went to a Stadtpark in Vienna to take some pictures while the sun was out. It was a lovely winter day. Starting this video using the main lens, both phones captured great footage. The Galaxy was more exposed as usual and more vivid, while the iPhone was more contrasty. The Galaxy has a third telephoto lens that the iPhone lacks, so zoom shots are more detailed. This is something I find very useful in street photography, since you normally want to avoid looking like a creep by getting too close. At 2x zoom, there is no difference between the phones apart from the color processing. But at 3x zoom, the difference becomes noticeable when Samsung switches to the telephoto lens. At 5x zoom, it is clear that the Galaxy captures more details and produces a sharper photo than the iPhone. At 10x zoom, the iPhone's photo is no longer usable, but the Galaxy still produces a decent image considering the distance to the subject. The Galaxy can zoom up to 30 times compared to 10 times on the iPhone. From time to time, I find myself appreciating the extra range on the Galaxy. Also, Galaxy phones run special algorithms for longer zoom ranges. I must admit, I am very impressed by the colors on the Galaxy S25. Across all lenses, including ultrawide, main, and telephoto, the colors are vibrant and pleasant. The cherry on top is having log, which lets you capture videos with great dynamic range and color grade it however you want. I love that Samsung does not handicap the S25 base model. For the iPhone 16, the video is also great, but for me, the colors are a bit muted, and the contrast is too strong. I sometimes feel that information is lost in the footage because of that, but I know a lot of you prefer that kind of processing. By the time I finished taking photos and videos, the Galaxy S25 had 86% and the iPhone had 93% battery left. Before getting my scooter to go out and have fun, let's test the mics. Let's test the microphone. I'm now shooting in log in Galaxy S25. The scooter that I have here is from Evercross. It is EV10 Max. I really love it. I'm using it already for a few months and I cannot be happier. As you can see, there is also a display. You can change between 3 speeds. You can go 10 km per hour, 15 km per hour, and 20 km per hour, which is great. Let's switch to iPhone. Now I switch to iPhone 16. They also has an app. It's called Evercross, which you can see here. I already drove 8 km today and it only used 1 bar out of 5. The range is around 60 km, and also you can lock your scooter. I will put the link in the description down below. Just for disclaimer, they also sent me this device for free. Now I am putting each phone around my neck for around 20 minutes while driving this e-scooter and recording video in 4K and 30 frames per second. There are no magnets on the S25, but you can simply use a MagSafe case to access all MagSafe accessories. I'll put the link to the one I use, called Pitaka, in the description. I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over again in this video, but to me the difference between the footage from the Galaxy S25 and iPhone 16 is very clear. The colors on the S25 are more vivid, which I prefer, while the iPhone 16 is a bit muted. Shadows on buildings and trees are more lifted on the S25, while on the iPhone 16 there is more contrast. But overall, I wouldn't say either of them is better than the other. They both perform well. Also, I sped up the video, which is why it seems like I'm driving fast. I'm actually going 20 km per hour and there is no school zone around. I can repeat the exact same observation when it comes to photos with the ultra-wide lens, more contrast and deeper blacks on the iPhone, more vividness and lifted shadows on the Galaxy. The same applies to the main lens, where Galaxy phones are more exposed. At 10 times zoom, the difference is obvious. The Galaxy photo is rather detailed, while the iPhone one is just meh. I went back home and now the Galaxy S25 is at 78%, while the iPhone is at 81% battery. I also went to the bird park nearby and used both phones for a bit to take photos and browse the web. One random thing I like more about the Galaxy S25 is the simplicity of the buttons. All buttons are on one side, leaving the left side completely empty. While on the iPhone, there are simply too many, especially with the new camera button. Even though I use the iPhone daily for work, my muscle memory still sometimes get confused about how to volume up and down. The next point is a bit subjective, but I personally prefer the design of the iPhone 16 over the Galaxy. The new camera rings on the Galaxy make it look a bit cheap, and it actually is cheap. Zach from JRigs Everything showed that the camera rings are glued on and not actually attached to the camera housing. The iPhone has another advantage, a closer focal distance for macro shots. As you can see here, the iPhone's macro shot is much more detailed compared to the Galaxy. Yes, you can use the telephoto lens on the Galaxy for macro shots, but in my opinion, it is not comparable and isn't designed for that purpose. On the other hand, the Galaxy usually doesn't have these annoying green reflections on the screen, as you can see here. Both phones have great filter systems for photos, and here I'm using the amber filter on both. In general, I recommend that whether you have an iPhone or the Galaxy, you play around with the filters a bit. You can really change the vibe of your photo for the better if you find the right one for the right situation. For direct flare, the iPhone 16 manages it better compared to the Galaxy S25. And before you ask, yes, I made sure the lens was clean before shooting this shot. Here, I took a video with my Sony FX30 Pro Cinema camera to see how the colors from both phones compare to a real camera. Both phones are slightly overexposed the scene. If you look at the trees, the greens are lighter on the Galaxy, but overall, both did a good job, and the colors are not drastically different from what we've already seen. With a 3x telephoto lens, the Galaxy captures better details compared to the iPhone. If you want those details and use zoom a lot, you are better off with the iPhone 16 Pro. You can also use cinematic mode on the iPhone, which is called portrait video on the Galaxy, to blur the background. Even for inanimate objects, you can do that. I do feel the cinematic mode on the iPhone works better compared to the Galaxy here. You can also use this mode when you are vlogging with a selfie camera. I particularly like how iPhone is handling the scene, but Galaxy is also right. When I finished taking the video, both phones had the same battery percentage, 67%. So I grabbed my stuff and went home to test the performance of the phones and do some other comparisons. First thing first, I want to check battery drain while playing YouTube videos on Wi-Fi. I played YouTube non-stop for about an hour, and by the end of the test, both phones used a similar percentage and had a similar display temperature. For the next performance test, I ran GeekBench to see how much better the new Snapdragon AIIIII is compared to A18. The S25 got a better multi-core score, while the iPhone excelled in the single-core test. Then I ran the Wildlife Extreme test to check graphic performance. The test is short, and by the end of it, the Galaxy scored much higher, around 6,400 versus 3,900. And we can't compare the Galaxy and the iPhone without comparing their operating system. The lock screen on OneUI 7 is now very similar to iOS 18. The only difference is that the S25 has a fingerprint scanner, which I really enjoy using, while the iPhone only supports Face ID via Dynamic Island. I sometimes find this problematic when using my phone at a weird angle. The widgets on the Galaxy look better now in OneUI 7, and at least in shape, they seem inspired by the iPhone. The animations are smooth on both phones, but since the iPhone is still 60Hz, I do notice that it's not as smooth as the Galaxy S25. Now when you swipe down from the left side, you go to the notification center on both phones. I would say the notification center is still much better on the Galaxy compared to the iPhone. You can swipe from right to access the quick settings. That part is also more similar now, and on both, the icons are big and nice. And of course, Galaxy is the pioneer of AI on phones. There is this new AI button on the sidebar which I find useful for translating things. For example, If you want to translate a YouTube comment or summarize it, you can simply select the comment and click on the summarize button. I find this extremely helpful in apps where you normally can't select text, like Reddit. I also know that a lot of people use interpreter frequently. This isn't something you'll find extremely useful when traveling in a country where people speak some sort of Western language, but in the East, I can see myself using it. I wish I had it when I was living in Hong Kong. And of course, Galaxy still has the useful circle to search feature. Over the past year, there have been a handful of situations while traveling where I used this feature to find places by taking pictures of posters. Now, let's look at the night photos. So it is almost complete darkness. I'm going outside to take photos with the Galaxy S25 and iPhone 16. The characteristics of night photos on the Galaxy is that the shutter speed is lower. And when you take a picture, the Galaxy takes a few seconds longer to complete it. That means the sky and everything else is more exposed, and you need to be more careful not to move your hand to avoid a blurry picture. Also, the yellow tint in the photos is still there, and I don't know when Galaxy plans to solve this issue. For night video, I can't decide which one I dislike more. The video is noisier on the Galaxy, especially on the ultrawide lens. The white balance is too yellow because of the yellow lights. On the other hand, the iPhone 16 has 3 ugly green reflections whenever I take a video in low light, which ruins the footage. You can always see these reflections when other creators make videos too. At least on the Galaxy, I can switch to the selfie lens without stopping the recording, which is very neat. When I got back home after all the tests, the Galaxy S25 was at 33% and the iPhone 16 was at 39% battery left. The total screen on time was 3 hours and 41 minutes. I left both phones disconnected from Wi-Fi to upload all the pictures and videos of the day to Google Cloud. After half a day of standby, the Galaxy S25 had 26%, while the iPhone had 29% battery left. I'm not super impressed by the battery life of the Galaxy S25. This is the second S25 I've had since I thought the first one was defective. But it seems the Galaxy S25 with the current OneUI 7 could be more power efficient. I initially thought the Galaxy was going to blow the iPhone out of the water, but that did not happen. If you enjoyed this video, I made a camera comparison of the Galaxy S25 versus the iPhone 16, which you can watch next. Thanks for tuning in to TechMo, and I will see you in the next one.